Okay, hello. So, some of you may know this already, some of you may not know it, but if you've recently bought the DJI Mavic 2 Pro, or if you've had it for a longer time, you will have noticed it has two modes for 4K. One of them is called full field of view, or full FOV, which uses the entire width of the entire sensor. The other one is called 4K HQ and is much narrower. In this case, it doesn't look narrow because I got further away to take this shot, but you can see that the background is much more condensed than this shot because it's basically like a different lens. Now, there are plenty of videos comparing the quality between these two, and there's more detail and more sharpness in the HQ footage because this one matches the pixels 1-to-1, and this one, while it uses more input data and should return a better image this way, the downsampling algorithm that the Mavic uses is not very great, and the quality degrades because of this. So I saw a video about this recently made by Rich Photography. I will have that link down below. And he mentioned that because of this downsampling, which we don't know exactly what it is, but it appears to be basically like pixel binning and then some upscaling or something like that, some weird mix going on, he proposed that basically this 4K full field of view shouldn't really look much worse than if you just shot 2.7K, which is what we have right here. Now he compares that in his video, but the 4K will always look sharper in a direct comparison simply because the resolution is higher. If you have an edge like here on this building, it will look more straight, but in order to get around that, I took both of these 2.7K clips, one at 25p and the other at 50p. I should mention, because I'm German, I'm using PAL, so we're not going to have 30 and 60, we're going to have 25 and 50. And these have been upscaled to 4K, exported in H.265, this one at 100 Mbit per second, which is double the original 50, and this one I doubled from 90 all the way to 180, so it should have pretty good quality for this comparison and should eliminate any issues that come from the resolution itself. Now, in order to make this comparison a bit more fair and a bit more closer to a real-world application, which is also I'm using the shot and not a chart, I'm going to use the same effects that I would use in the real world. So one of them is the lens correction. This is a value precisely as recommended by DJI. The same goes for the other clips. 2.7K has a different lens correction than full field of view because it does apparently use a slightly smaller part of the sensor, although it's not really noticeable here. And I'm putting a little bit of sharpening on top because I've determined that with around 12 of this simple sharpening on the full FOV, you'll get similar sharpness to the HQ footage, you just won't get the detail back. So then on top of that, this is the standard DJI D-Log 2X709 LUT, which just mostly adds saturation and contrast. This will make it easier to compare the footage because any inaccuracies in the color will be more obvious and all edges will be more clearly defined with the higher contrast. On the 2.7K clips, I'm using a little bit more sharpening because I determined earlier that this would about match the look that I'm getting here with this sharpening. So already you can tell there's a small difference there. Now, if we zoom in to 200% here, we can go up a bit and you can see the roof here. The roof here is really nice because we have the detail here, we have this wall with some stripes here, and we have this edge. And this is the 4K full FOV, and it's clearly visible. There are some artifacts here of the downsampling, where there's some aliasing going on this edge, as well as here. There's some interpolation issues going on, definitely. We can see here in the HQ footage, it looks a lot cleaner. This is still not perfect because it's just too small. Now, I do think it's worth pointing out that you actually don't lose that much detail, though. Even though this edge looks a bit worse, if we look at most of the wall here, even these like small vertical stripes here are still visible, and you can sort of make them out here. Unfortunately, I went a bit too far out for this shot. For the HQ shot, I matched up the other ones far better in terms of the position of the building, but still you can see the loss of detail is not that big, especially with the sharpening. If we disable that, you definitely notice a difference, but with sharpening, it's very similar to this. In the 2.7K, however, we can see the edge. You see less aliasing on it, but that's because it's a lot softer. So the image, even though there's more sharpening on it, still looks softer. You can clearly see you lose some detail here. The vertical stripes aren't really visible anymore, and it just looks a lot less sharp. So it will definitely still produce a very different result. Also keep in mind that this 2.7K footage has been encoded at 50 Mbit per second. This has been encoded at 100 Mbits per second, so there will be some loss in the compression anyway. Also keep in mind that here the image is downsampled using the Mavic's algorithm, whatever that is precisely, to 4K, and then we just leave it there. And here it is downsampled to 2.7K, and we have upsampled it again. So definitely quite a lossy conversion. Now what's also quite interesting is if we compare this to a high frame rate footage, in this case 50p, there's definitely still some difference, so another loss in quality. We can very clearly see that on the small stripes on the wall here. They completely disappear, and all we had is some weird color artifacting from the lines. What Wood Photography mentioned in his video is that because the quality difference isn't that big between the full FOV and the 2.7K, you can basically get 4K 60p footage with the Mavic 2. But as we've seen here, there is still quite a noticeable drop in quality, even though it comes with some benefits like some smoother edges or less artifacts due to this downsampling process. But definitely still doesn't look as sharp as the full FOV. And definitely the high frame rate footage in 2.7K isn't much worse, and you don't really want to use that. Now, I also would say that if you put sharpening on the full FOV footage, it really doesn't look much worse than the HQ footage, and is definitely usable. We can also take a look here, because the HQ footage uses less of the sensor, which is also why, because I forgot to take care of that when I was shooting, slightly bumped the exposure here. But you can definitely see there's some noise going on here in the image, and there's far less of that in the full FOV because it uses the full sensor. And the downsampling algorithm, while it ignores some of the data, is still very good in terms of noise. So in conclusion, you probably don't want to use 2.7K footage, especially not at high frame rates, if you're going to be exporting in 4K. At the same time, the full FOV will definitely still perform worse than HQ in terms of detail, but will perform better in terms of noise, and with some sharpening will not look much worse. You can also download the clips that I use for this comparison with the link below.